There comes a point in every game development cycle where you have to ask yourself the big question. Do I continue or do I cancel? I've been working on Willard for 4 years now. This summer I finally had to ask myself the question, is this game actually any fun? Because coming up with a cool idea is easy. Spending 4 years working on it is harder, but spending another 4 years working on it if nobody's actually going to want to play it? Well, I'd just rather find out now. Now, in case you aren't one of the 3 people who already knows about my game, Willard is a hybrid platformer about a world ruined by out-of-control technology and the player's journey to climb a mountain in search of answers. And the climb? Well, it's impossible, at least at first. During each climb, you'll recruit new characters to your village, so when your run inevitably fails, you get to return home, meet your villagers, build new structures, and prepare for your next attempt. But that's where there's a bit of a twist, because failure has consequences. Each time you return to your village, temporal portals open up and the technopocalypse gets another chance to ruin your village. So that's the concept, and I've been laboring away at this thing for 4 years already. But the question is the game actually fun? The concept's cool, but does this thing actually work? Now, before I render a verdict, you should know that my situation is a little unusual. First, I don't have a publisher breathing down my neck, and I do have a full-time job as a teacher. So it's not like I'll be sleeping in the gutter or selling internal organs if Willard doesn't become immediately profitable. Second, 4 years is a long time to invest in a game. But in truth, when I started, I couldn't tell my butt from my brainstem when it came to coding or art. I've rebooted the project 3 times, so it's not like I've lost 4 years of my life and barely have a demo to show for it. The current version is really only about 2 years old. Finally, I really love game development, so if I decided tomorrow that Willard wasn't worth continuing, I wouldn't consider those 4 years wasted. I'd have learned an enormous amount, I'd have made something I'm proud of, and I'd have had a whole lot of fun doing it. But if the game isn't fun, then I don't want to spend another 4 years making it. So this June, I put together a rough demo, gave it to my high school programming students, and I told them to break it. Now, did each student recede into a place of zen-like bliss where time lost all meaning only for them to emerge hours later as lifelong Willard acolytes? Well, no, not really. They didn't hate it, and a couple liked it enough to stick around at lunch to keep playing, but I'll be honest with you, if it weren't for the novelty of getting to play a game that was made by their teacher, I don't think many of them would have stuck around past the first 2 minutes. Now, this was the first true test of Willard, so I wasn't quite ready to Spotify an emo playlist and cry myself to sleep. Instead of getting depressed, I looked at the feedback, watched my students play, and I took notes. I looked carefully at the long list of bugs and suggestions in our class forum, then I opened up my spreadsheet and I got to planning. Because I wasn't ready to give up on Willard yet. I hoped that by the end of summer I could make Willard fun again. Now we all know that nothing says fun like a long list of bug fixes, so I'll spare you those details. But I do want to tell you what I've been doing to try to bring the fun. I started with some important quality of life features. For example, there was no way to return to the main menu from the game, so if a player encountered a bug or got soft-locked, they generally just walked away. Also, while Willard technically had a death system, it just disappeared and then a game over screen faded in. So I gave death a little more weight. Now if you die, time slows down, the music changes, and you get a full slow-motion death effect. Then the scene fades out. It's a small thing, but it makes it feel like the moment matters. A bigger problem was difficulty. My students were dying a lot in the second zone, a dimly lit cave region, and some of them were stopping playing altogether as soon as that happened. The problem wasn't that the game was too difficult, but I was asking players to master a bunch of movement mechanics before they'd really had a chance to practice them. So I added a new intermediary cave zone. This gives players more time to practice their cave movement, wall jumps, ledge grabs, wall slides, before throwing them into the more challenging platforming sections. That said, no one wants to play a boring tutorial level. This couldn't just be more of the same but easier. So I turned this into a real part of the world. There's a hermit's shelter, a locked elevator shaft, secrets I can't tell you about. So instead of saying, here's a tutorial, learn how to wall jump, I hope the game says, what's that over there? how can I use my moveset to get to it? So that fixed the bugs and improved quality of life. But I had to admit that, especially at the opening of the game, there wasn't a whole lot to push the player forward or motivate them to explore. I'd removed the barriers to fun, but did that alone make the game enjoyable? This is what I would spend the rest of the summer working on. The first change the player would notice starting the game now is the new weather system. Now I know weather isn't really a gameplay system that makes a game fun, but you also can't not notice it, and it does something important. Each region now has different weather probabilities depending on the season. Blue skies, driving rain, blowing mist, and snowfall. It makes each visit to a zone feel just a little unique, and honestly, it just looks pretty. But let's get to the important stuff. What have I added that can actually move the fun meter? Well, first, I added some major upgrades to checkpoints. Previously, they were essentially what you see in classic Super Mario. They save your positions, you don't have to go back to the beginning of the level if you die. They still do that, but now, whenever you touch a checkpoint, you find a chest left behind by a mysterious benefactor. Inside is random loot, including a guaranteed piece of gear. This is especially important in the beginning because you start out in your boxers, so each piece of gear makes a real difference. I also made it so you can now interact with checkpoints. Each time you do this, you'll receive a message from their creator. These are short, optional messages that slow drip the player important details about the world and greater narrative of the game. Hopefully this leaves the player wondering, who on earth is leaving these for me and what do they mean? Then there are the shrines. The world of Archaea is filled with different religious faiths, and littered throughout the world are ruins of old shrines. When you find one, you get a choice. You can restore it, you can choose which faith to dedicate it to, or you can spurn the gods and scatter the ruins to the wind. Whatever you choose, it affects your level of faith, which will have important consequences for your interactions with NPCs in the future. This means that exploration gives you more than just another collectible. Instead, the things you discover actually change your game. This brings me to one of Willard's core mechanics, anima. As you explore, you'll find statues littered throughout the world. You'll soon find that you can reanimate these objects by interacting with local anima beacons. Sounds great, right? But there's a catch. Activating a beacon starts the region's portal countdown. When that countdown reaches 0, temporal portals start appearing, and those portals like to party like it's 1989. This functions something like a blood moon in Zelda, ensuring regions don't become sterile forever once you've cleared them. But these portals also create the need for strategy, as any structures you may have built in the region can now become targets for destruction. And yeah, we should talk about structures. In past videos, I've talked a lot about your ability to build and defend a village, but what I haven't talked about much is how exactly that all works. As of this summer, you can now inspect any building you find in the world and obtain a blueprint for building it. Find a hidden lumber mill? You can eventually build one yourself. Find a strange old cottage? You can turn it into a home in your village. Need to reach somewhere you can't normally get to? Try building a tower. And suddenly exploring the world isn't just about finding treasure. The world itself teaches you how to expand your village. Now, did all this progress mean I spent the entire summer chained to my laptop, slowly watching all color bleed out of the real world while I salivated in a zombified stupor over the next new feature for Willard? Well, not exactly. Normally, summer is the perfect time for me to work on Willard. I'm a teacher, so I've got a glorious stretch of time where I can program all day. But there's something I've learned while making this game. Willard's supposed to be about adventure, and if I'm going to make a game about wonder and exploration, probably shouldn't spend my entire summer staring at a small screen in a dimly lit room. So every summer, I try to have an adventure of my own. I climbed to a mountain firewatch with my dad, brother, and son. I drove with my daughter all the way to the Arctic Ocean, hiking mountains under the midnight sun. Traveled to an orphanage in Thailand with my son, where I experienced a culture I'd never visited before. Mountains, ocean, new places, good food, lots of camping. More driving than any reasonable person should do in one summer. And yeah, that meant I spent less time developing Willard than I could have. But I'm okay with that. Life's not just about the grind. If Willard's about wonder, adventure, and discovery, I should probably experience those things myself. Otherwise, what am I putting into this game? Alright, so after 4 years, after 3 reboots, after giving my game to my students and having them break it to pieces, am I going to cancel Willard? Well, no, at least not yet. Honestly, I'm more excited about this project now than I was when I first started. Does that mean I've got everything figured out? No, and honestly, I still don't want to continue if the game isn't going to be fun. Will a stranger on Steam play the game for 5 minutes or 5 hours? I don't know. There's only one way to find out. I feel like there's something here in this game that's worth pursuing, and that justifies giving Willard just a little more time. So here's the plan. In September, I hope to have yet another demo ready for my students. I'm going to get them to break into pieces, and when I've collected all those pieces and put them back together, I'm going to make one last demo. The hope is to start up a Steam page and put the demo live so I can get some actual feedback from strangers. And then we'll return to the question, is the game fun? Should we continue or cancel? If you followed along this far, thanks so much for your interest in the project and your support. I hope to provide you with some more updates in the near future, but until that time, this is Matt with Nightrun Studio. Cheers.